Meaning it has a low capital to asset ratio. Even small losses can bring the bank to the edge of insolvency. When such a bank takes write-downs on its equity, it is often forced to rapidly shrink its balance sheet.
What tutorials allow you to do and force you to do is think on your feet. It's like improvisation in music. I actually studied music and I always had difficulty with improvisation. I followed the notes. I have a feeling if I went back to it now, I might be a little bit better at it, because in a tutorial, I have no idea what the students are going to come up with. That's the case in a lot of classes, but in tutorials, it's squared. It's to the nth degree. Tutorials are quite unique to Williams. They developed from an idea of a previous president who himself had studied at Oxford, the ideal of Mark Hopkins and the log, where you have the teacher on one end of a log and the student on the other end of the log, and they're engaging with each other in dialogue. And I think until tutorials, we hadn't had quite such a vivid embodiment of that ideal.
I mean, I just thought the whole idea of looking at Odysseus as a figure of the bourgeois, of the elite, I thought that was a really interesting concept.
A tutorial is a class of no more than 10 students. The class is divided into pairs. Each week, the professor meets with each pair. And for each meeting, one of the pair writes a paper, usually a 5-page paper, and the other partner writes a critique of that paper, and that forms the basis of the discussion.
Enlightenment dissolves away, this is a good thing about enlightenment, dissolves away the injustice of the old inequality of unmediated mastery. So I think
basically we've been studying German literature from 1784, I want to say, up until 1947.
In tutorials, students learn how to learn from each other, more than relying on the professor to profess. The professor is pretty much silent for the first 20 minutes, half hour of each meeting. Through the awkwardness of not having a professor's voice fill that silence, they learn that they need to think and learn and listen from each other.
It's nice to be in dialogue with other students' ideas rather than just the text. Like today we were doing the dialectic of enlightenment, which is wonderful and dense. And by reading this in a tutorial setting where it's just me, the professor, and another student, I can so much more readily admit that here's this part that I didn't understand.
A tutorial is a protected space where we come to realize that we can trust each other to critique gently but thoroughly, to listen carefully.
If you have a raw idea, then the professor or your partner can sometimes put it more eloquently than you can. So as a result, that helps you really develop your own ideas and sort of not be afraid to go out on a limb.
It's exhilarating. It's so much fun when just all of a sudden ideas are popping out of our collective heads, the three of us. Tutorials help students work in conversation with others. I think that's really important in later life, whether it's in a classroom or in the marketplace or in the courtroom or any kind of workplace, because it helps them listen as well as talk.
It's both helped us grow as students and just as people.
One of the things I like best about tutorials is that they have given everyone a voice. Tutorials are very empowering for individual students. And for me, that's how change really happens at an institution, one individual at a time.